Shout out to G-Man Boxing.
Alright, people. Review of the week time. So, plenty to talk about. Good bit happened in the last week. But let's start with the fights that happened. Specifically, let's have a look at the Queensberry card that happened last night. Now, I'm going to be frank. I actually completely forgot this fight was happening, or this card was happening this weekend. I actually thought it was nearer the end of the month that this card was happening. But I have to say, and I don't big him up a lot, but I thought that this card by Queensberry and Frank Warren was actually very good. You know, by their standards, the cards that they've been producing, certainly for like the last, probably longer than the last year now, realistically. Like, I mean, they had a little kind of purple patch between 2017 and 2018. It's just gone to the dogs since then. But this card was quite good. Now, I have to say, it was quite good. Some of the fights we saw, now I'll talk about just the ones I saw, was Nick Ball against, I'm not even going to pronounce this guy's name, it was an African fighter, and he got the stoppage in the 12th round. He is fun to watch. I mean, the guy is only, he's only about like 5'2", I think. No, 5'5", he's not that small, I thought he was smaller than that, but still, he's 5'5", fights very aggressively, definitely has power there. We saw that against Isaac Lowe. I mean, Isaac Lowe never had a moment to breathe in that fight, and in this fight, some of the shots he threw were a bit sloppy, but ultimately he was able to get the guy out of there in the 12th round. I also saw Dennis McCann on this card. Now, Dennis McCann was up here. He was up at featherweight, but realistically, he was only slightly above the super bantamweight limit. This was for a WBC international title up at featherweight, but let's not beat around the bush. He really is. I mean, James Beach's opponent even came in at 123. He's a super bantamweight. He admitted that himself in the post-fight. But this is the best McCann's looked for a while now. Now, when McCann turned over pro, he was only about 18 years old. Let's see here. I think I seen his pro debut on the Billy Joe Saunders Ifrat Sufi undercard. I seen a couple of his fights from then on, and he looked impressive in the way he would, the way he was fighting. Now, he was only 18 at the time, so for someone 18 to be impressed with him then, it speaks a bit, because there's a lot of room to improve and there's a lot of time. I have to say, over the last few fights, pretty much his last 3 fights, I haven't really been massively impressed. I haven't. He fought an Argentinian guy here back in I think it was 2021. It was the very end of the year, who he'd been stopped before. He campaigned as low as flyweight, recent enough, and McCann never looked close to stopping him. And in his last fight as well, there was just moments where it just looked like McCann was just, I don't know, maybe he wasn't putting the training in training camp, I don't know. But that bit of impression that I got from him early on was kind of dipping a bit. But he looked very good in this fight against James Beach. If I have one criticism of him in that fight, I felt that when he hurt him in the first round, he smothered his work a little bit. He went, balls to the wall looking for the knockout, and he was able to drop him. But a lot of the shots he was throwing, he was wasting a lot of shots, very much so wasting a lot of shots. But ultimately, he was able to get rid of him in there in the end, in the 8th round. I was impressed. I really was impressed. He said he's going to go back down to super bantam. I think that's going to suit him. They said it on the show, and they're true. They're right to an extent. He's only 21 years old. He has youth on his side, and he's not a 21-year-old who's just turned over. This is his 13th pro fight, so he can be brought along. Frank Warren, for all my criticisms of him, he is very good at bringing fighters along. I know Anthony Yarde, you'll say, like, that was a bit bizarre going from no level to Kovalev. Yeah, it was. But that's the exception rather than the rules. And normally when it comes to matchmaking, Frank Warren is quite good. Normally when it comes to, when he's got a fighter who's got a bit of talent, as Dennis McCann clearly does, he is quite good at progressing them through their career. He is. Picking the right fights at the right time, making the necessary step-ups when he feels it's ready. He's quite good at that, is Warren. Hamer's Sari, I'm always getting this guy's name wrong. I'm always butchering his name. Always. But the middleweight, we all know who I'm talking about. The guy who recently, I think it might have been the fight before that, but he fought Bradley Skeet. It was Jazz Smith was his last fight. I seen that actually as well. He was looking good in that fight. But I remember he fought Bradley Skeet the back end of last year, and yeah, that was a bad fight in a sense of how it ended. But this was a good fight. He really did look good here against Francesco Torres, I should say. Had him down in the third round. Was actually down himself as well, but ultimately was able to come through a little bit of a mini crisis and get him out of there in the fifth round. It was a big shot, it was a big right hand, a big knockout. Ultimately, I was impressed by him. Yeah, he was down in the third round. Of course, not ideal, but everything else taken into consideration, I thought he looked okay. I think that they're progressing him ever so steadily. And, you know, he at the end of the day, right, he's fought Jazz Smith in his last fight. The Jazz Smith has taken some beatings in his career. I know he's only 13-4 in that fight, but he's had some tough fights, like even over there in Spain and Bilbao against Leharaga in a fight that was stopped prematurely, but he was taking a bit of a beating prior to that. Bradley Skeet, he's getting outboxed a bit by Skeet now, you have to say, before he was able to drop him and then hit him when he was down. So we'll keep an eye on him. Hamza, I always get his first name right, Hamza. It's the last name I struggle with. But then there was, that was actually top of the bill, a fight that was lower down the card. I think this was the third fight before the main event, but this was the fight that intrigued me the most. Now, I didn't do a prediction video on this fight, but I knew this fight was in the pipeline. I knew this fight was happening. If you had asked me going into this, I would have said Lennox Clark beats Mark Heffron, probably on points or late stoppage. That's my thinking going into it. And my rationale for that was, I've seen Mark Heffron plenty of times. I've seen him in there against Liam Williams. Looking back in hindsight, that was a bridge too far, especially at middleweight. Bridge too far for Mark Heffron. Then he fought Denzel Bentley in a very close fight. Bentley probably, for most of his money, just nicked it, but it was a draw. They had a rematch, and Bentley looked a lot better in the rematch. Was able to find Heffron with the right hand early. Was able to bust his eye up. I think it was a bad swelling, and he was stopped. At that point, I thought, okay, Heffron's found his limit. That's really kind of British level, sort of sub-British level. That's kind of where he's at. And then he moves up to 168 pounds. All right, and by all accounts, it's not a massive 168 pounder. Like, he was only 166 pounds on weigh-in. That indicates to me he's not finding it extraordinarily difficult to lose the weight. But it looked decent size in there anyway. But Lennox Clark, I'd only seen him lose once, and that was against Lerone Richards, who I remember that fight well, and it was a split decision. It was very competitive. Now, it was a very competitive fight, and he was the underdog in his previous fight, at least I think he was going in, against Willie Hutchinson, who was certainly undefeated, and that was a real devastating knockout. Lennox Clark really, that was a vicious knockout against Willie Hutchinson. Now, you would say the catch-22 for Lennox Clark is that as good as a performance that was against Willie Hutchinson, it was March 2021. He's been out of the ring for a while. He wasn't able to build on that, whereas Heffron, although the Bentley loss, which was the last time he really stepped up to that level, was in 2020, at least he'd been active. He had 2 fights in the space of 6 months towards the back end, I should say, of 2021, up until March. So going into this fight, he'd had that bit of ring time, and it was a really, really fun fight for the 5 rounds. I really enjoyed it. Lennox Clark in the opening pretty much the opening minute, looked to be able to establish himself. He looked to be the sharper of the two, but Heffron was able to hurt Clark in the first round, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. Now, Clark came out and had a good second round, to his credit. He didn't really buzz Heffron, but he was definitely on top in the second round. But then after, it was all Mark Heffron. He was really getting some seriously hard body shots in there. And in the fourth round, he appeared to hurt Clark to the body because he was finding a target. He was throwing both hands down to the body, and he was landing on Lennox Clark. Lennox Clark didn't really have an answer. His corner were telling him just box. But when he was boxing, he really didn't seem to be able to keep Heffron off him. And Joe Gallagher was actually given, and I'm not the biggest Joe Gallagher fan as a trainer, certainly not as a manager. I don't know what he's like as a person. He might be okay as a person, but he gave Mark Heffron some sound advice in there. And in the 5th round, this is where the controversy lies. In the 5th round, he buzzed Lennox Clark and proceeded to back up again the ropes, and Bob Williams stopped the fight. Now, Lennox Clark was fuming. He was irate. He pushed Bob Williams, and he might get a bit of a slap on the wrist from the British Boxing Board for that. But he pushed Bob Williams. His corner men were very unhappy with Bob Williams as well. I think it was premature in my opinion, but it's not the worst premature stoppage I've ever seen. All right, I've seen worse. When I saw it live, without seeing the replay, I was like, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing, referee? When I watched the replay, although personally I feel it could have carried on, I can kind of see, and the position Bob Williams was in, I can kind of see why he did stop it. Having said that, I do think that he should have given Lennox Clark the benefit of the doubt in that scenario, and at least given him maybe 10 to 15 seconds longer, just to see if he could have came through that crisis. Just my opinion. Now, there was a fighter, Pierce O'Leary. I think he's from Limerick. He's from Dublin, actually. Jesus, I thought he was from Limerick. I'm sure there was maybe I was thinking of Paddy Donovan. But Pierce O'Leary was on that card. I didn't see him. He's an Irish prospect in the super lightweight division. People were telling me about him. I've seen him fight, but I didn't see this fight. But apparently it was a big knockout. So I'll have to give that a look at and see how that was. In terms of the fight that was over in the States, obviously Ryan Garcia against Javier Fortuna. I did watch that fight. Thought Garcia did what I expected him to do. He stopped he dropped Garcia. He stopped Fortuna several times. Was able to get the stoppage in the sixth. Ryan Garcia's speed, his shot selection, Ryan Garcia, for his speed, athleticism, aggression, punching power, it's all there. It's all there. And there's no issue there. It's the defense. It's his lack of head movement. It's the fact that he pulls back with his chin in the air. I think that's what needs addressing. And to be honest with you, I don't know if Joe Goosen is the guy to do that, because Joe Goosen is known... I've never really rated Joe Goosen too highly, but he's known for being a more aggressive type coach. Well, that's not Ryan Garcia's problem. Ryan Garcia, I think, needs to be shown the fine art of defense. And I think that will make a big difference to Ryan Garcia moving forward. Tank Davis's name was brought up, and personally, like, I love that fight. I'd love to see that fight happen. If it could happen next, I think that's a fantastic fight to be made. I would favour Tank Davis slightly in that fight. I think Tank Davis would acclimatise to the speed, and I think he'd be able to counter Ryan Garcia. We've seen Ryan Garcia get countered from Luke Campbell in the orthodox stance with overhand rights. I think that Gervonta Tank Davis, although he's not as long and rangy as Luke Campbell, I think he'd be able to find Ryan Garcia with that left hand. And if Luke Campbell can buzz you, Tank Davis certainly can. I just feel as though with Ryan Garcia, he's been talking about Canelo and Eddie Reynoso, and you know, there's a lot of animosity there. You can see there's a lot of animosity there, and probably on both parts. But Canelo has said that, look, he wasn't showing up to training. Reynoso will only work with you if you're dedicated. Is Ryan Garcia loves the celebrity status, but is he dedicated to boxing? The jury's still out on that. Like, I'd love to see what would happen in a real crisis, you know, if he was in a fight where he really was, you know, backed up against the ropes. I know the Campbell fight, he was dropped and he came through adversity, which he did, but he was in control of that fight for the most part anyway. I'd love to see what would happen in there against someone who's, you know, given as good as he gets. How might that happen? How would Ryan Garcia tackle that? I suspect he'd probably come through it okay, but you never know. In terms of some of the news that's been out there as well, obviously Deontay Wilder, the return, were being talked about. I was only looking at some clips of Deontay Wilder again today, just his old highlights. Still one of the most exciting fighters out there. I've no doubt when he comes back he will still be. Robert Helenius is being talked about, potential fight. You know, Shelley Finkel suggested they're targeting the winner of AJ Usyk. Honestly, like, Wilder to get have one fight when he comes back and get a world title shot, that shouldn't be the case. Obviously, with Deontay Wilder being highly ranked by the WBC still, and being a bit of a darling for the WBC, wouldn't shock me if he fights Helenius and he's named mandatory for the WBC. Wouldn't shock me if he fights Helenius and that's made mandatory for the WBA. Wouldn't shock me at all. The way the sanction bodies are, I'm sure someone like the WBA would look at Deontay Wilder and think, him against Usyk, him against AJ, money there. We'll make that a final eliminator, even though he's not had a win since 2019. But him returning to fight Robert Helenius, I don't think that's a bad fight at all. I really don't. I think it's a good comeback fight for Deontay Wilder, in a sense of Helenius poses danger in terms of power, but not anything else. It should be the ideal opponent for Wilder to find his form, have a bit of target practice on, and get a highlight reel knockout. I definitely think that that's going to be the case for Deontay Wilder. The British Boxing Board of Control have been announcing some fights for their British titles, basically. So Fabio Wadley versus Nathan Gorman, that was originally ordered for the English title. It's now to be set for the British title because Joe Joyce is vacated. So that fight's been ordered now by the British Boxing Board. I like the fight. I've never been really sold on Nathan Gorman, but Fabio Wadley's been looking a bit... I like the fight. It's interesting. It's one to think about. Personally, I think that if Nathan Gorman can get himself into shape, he should have the beating of Fabio Wadley. He really should. But Nathan Gorman, very ill-disciplined. I mean, this is a guy who said that he went from a pro gym to an amateur gym because the amateur gym was closer to his house. I mean, really, that's just a no. Just no. In terms of super welterweight, now this one's interesting. They announced Troy Williamson versus Josh Kelly. I mean, Josh Kelly I thought was still competing at welterweight, unless someone wants to correct me, but I'm sure when he fought recently that was back down at welterweight. Him against Troy Williamson, oh good luck, he is going to get lifted off the ground if he fights Troy Williamson. I don't see Josh Kelly winning that. And Josh Kelly's really stagnated badly since the loss to Avanesian. I mean, that loss really... I wasn't surprised per se that he lost to Avanesian. I was maybe a bit surprised that they really pulled the plugs on Josh Kelly as being the next big star. I never saw him as a star particularly. I always saw him as someone who was going to lose sooner or later, and I don't mean a major level. But I thought they would have tried Sky, Eddie Hearn, everything to rebuild him, but that's really not been the case. He's really stagnated badly since then, and I don't think I think Kelly doesn't have the physical strength or punching power. Certainly not for the guys like Troy Williamson at 154, who are big units at that weight. The AJ Usyk undercard, which I would imagine we're going to start getting announcements on further fights for that. I'd imagine someone said in the live that maybe Hrgovic versus Zhang on the undercard, and that wouldn't surprise me, and that would make a bit of sense, to be fair. But we've announced that Badu Jack will fight Richard Reaver. I've never heard of Richard Reaver. Let's have a look-see on BoxRec. Because there are fighters that I wouldn't talk about at all, but you hear of them. So this guy is 21-0, 31 years old. This is a heavyweight or cruiserweight? No, cruiserweight or light heavy. He's back down at light heavy. Thought Badu Jack was competing at cruiserweight, but he's beaten absolutely nobody that I know anyway. Joe Jones, no, it's different. Yeah, Israel Duffy's. I think I recognise his name. Who was he beating? Furlong Mang, yeah, I recognise him. Charles Foster, yeah, name rings a bell. Lost to all these guys, of course, but yeah, there's no one really on his resume that brings that. There's not really anything. I mean, Jesus. So that's the guy Badu Jack is fighting. Can't imagine he is going to have much trouble with him. Although Jack is getting up there in age, he still should have the beating of guys like this. He really should. Now here is some good news, and I hope this fight happens. I'm crossing all my fingers, crossing everything that this fight happens. Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford is reportedly close to being made. Mark it down, November in Las Vegas with no real obstacles in the way. If I could get over to America in November, I'd go to that fight. If America lift a couple of things and I can get over there, then I'd go over to that fight. Seriously, I think that fight is going to be tremendous. Crawford Spence, if it happens, please, if the boxing gods can help us with this one, get it over the line. I really, really, really want to see that fight. I think that fight is absolutely fantastic. I really do. I really think that fight is absolutely fantastic. In terms of some of the other news, and I'm obviously leaving the Eubank Ben thing till the very end. Just I know that's in the title, so if anyone's wondering, yeah, I'm leaving that till the end. We'll finish on that. I've got, I think, another one or two more things to talk about. Tyson Fury was on TalkSport, and he was talking about... Yeah, he's basically Anthony Joshua. So, Anthony Joshua, he was... So, I think people were criticising him a few weeks ago, and Fury was coming and saying, AJ's done more. No one criticised him. He's done more than loads of people. He can sit around drinking Peroni all. They're basically coming to AJ's defence. And now in an interview with TalkSport, he says AJ's an S-house, and I'll knock him out. If he beats Usyk, he's got to fight me for free in the UK, free to air TV. It'd be watched by 30 million, no pay-per-view, no money earned. Do we do we do this one for the fans of the UK. So a couple of weeks ago, he was saying he'd fight Usyk, but it has to be for $500 million. And he's saying he'd fight Usyk on free-to-air TV for free. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the AJ Usyk fight with regards to the winner and what Fury will do. If AJ wins, no doubt in my mind, he will be looking to make AJ. He'll be looking to get AJ next. Be looking for undisputed. Be looking to fight AJ next. No doubt in my mind. And I'd make Fury heavy favourite against AJ. Heavy favourite. If Usyk wins, I mean, there's already talk here. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I've already seen a picture of it, of Fury potentially having an exhibition with Hafthor Bjornsson. So, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. In terms of the last kind of bit of news I want to talk about, Conor Benn teased a big announcement today. Now, the announcement was just, it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. Just put it like that. It was a real letdown. But he did say in the comment section, fight's going to be announced this weekend. He's not specified who, but likelihood is it's going to be him. It's going to be Eubank, 156-pound catchweight at the O2 on the 8th of October. Again, looking at this fight, it really, to me, it's really just a case of how much money do we want to make. I can't make heads or tails of this fight because Ben, a small welterweight, going to 100 middleweight to fight Eubank. What, like, other than a paycheck, what does Eubank gain? He doesn't gain anything. And maybe that's the way Eubank's team are looking at it. I suspect, and this is just my suspicions, that the ghosts of the George Groves fight are still there. Because I think Team Eubank built their confidence to such a level following on from the Billy Joe Saunders loss. He had a couple of fights just to kind of, get the name out there, and his name definitely grew. Then there was the Golovkin debacle. Then he went to ITV pay-per-view. Quinlan sold the IBO title as, legitimate. Abraham, former champion, yes, whatever. Then there was the Yildirim fight, and at the time Yildirim was undefeated. He was a big unit. There was talk about him being a good sparring partner, knocking James DeGale's teeth out. So when he beat Yildirim, and he beat him in devastating fashion, I think a lot of people, myself included, were kind of looking. Now, obviously, I picked, it's easy for me to say now, but ask anyone who I wasn't the obvious now, but I was heavily favouring George Groves. But I definitely felt that Eubank was coming into it a lot. That even though he won't beat George Groves, he'll be game. Well, the George Groves fight, he wasn't really that game. He got outboxed, and George Groves won the fight comfortably. And it really showed the flaws in Eubank's game. And I wonder if Eubank and his team, although it's slightly changed a bit since then, but they still know that style will always be a problem, no matter who it is. I know they beat DeGale, but that was a shot, James DeGale. And DeGale made it easy for Eubank because he kept stepping into Eubank's range and meant that Eubank didn't have to close range down at all. If you're talking about the guys at middleweight, if Demetrius Andre sticks around, Yalabek's a good southpaw. Erislandy Lara is a great long-range boxer. I can't see Eubank having success against these guys. So if he's looking to win a world title or make big money fights, well, the big money fights in terms of names at middleweight, they're not really there. Lara's not a massive name. Yalabek's not a big name. Nor is Demetrius Andre, in all honesty. But Ben is, he's a welterweight, but that's a big fight in the UK. It sells. You make an awful lot of money. You don't get any credit for it, and your stock might take a hit from it, but does Eubank really care? Is he about making money at this stage and trying to pick up a title in what the easiest way possible? Oh, there's a vacant belt there. Come on, let's have that. But in the meantime, we need money. Let's fight Eubank on pay-per-view. That could be, or let's fight Ben on pay-per-view. That could be the rationale behind Team Eubank. If you're Team Ben, Eddie Hearn, you're making money. At the end of the day, the loss probably, unless he gets blown out of the water like that, it's probably not going to devastate. And even then, it probably wouldn't be a massive dent on Conor Benn because they can just turn around and say, hey, look, we're small welterweight, we stepped to middleweight. It is what it is. It happens. But my kind of fear for Den is that will they start rebuilding Ben slowly, as in going down the Chris Van Heerden's, the Chris Algieri road again? Potentially. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Probably going to get an announcement this week. We'll wait and see how that goes. And we'll wait and see, I mean, stranger things have happened. You know, someone was saying Josecito Carrasco could be an opponent for Conor Benn. I mean, nothing surprises me at this stage with Ben at this stage and who he's going to fight. Nothing surprises me, really doesn't. Wouldn't shock me if they announced going up to heavyweight to fight a return of Vladimir Klitschko. Wouldn't surprise me at this stage. Let me know in the comment section. Leave your thoughts below. Let me know what you thought. Review of the week. I always enjoy doing them. I know they're good fun to do. Let me know in the comment section your thoughts and everything I talked about. Smash the like button. Hope you're all enjoying it. 8,350 subs. We're getting there. We're nearly there. We're getting to 9k, then we get on to 10k. Then the fun starts. The channel comes to life at 10k. That's when the real fun begins. Because once I hit 10k, I love this channel so much. But once I hit 10k, I think I really need to not change, but really invest more in everything. You know, I mean, everything. I mean, that's when it's a real case of we really got to start thinking big. We're already thinking big, but that's when it's kind of now we flip the switch on. But that's hopefully not too far away. Hopefully not. Hopefully we get there soon. But everything else, I hope you all have a great week. It's nice out in Ireland. I'm sure it's nice in the UK, America, places like that. So enjoy the weather. And I hope you all have a great week. I hope whatever happens, it's good. And hopefully the phone rings with some good news for someone listening. Hope that happens. For now, I'll talk to these people. Peace.